Hey guys, tonight we begin with something you truly didn't ask for, an invitation to dinner. Not just any dinner, no, a Roman dinner, a convivium, hosted by someone powerful, absurdly rich, and deeply committed to ensuring that no one enjoys themselves too much. The kind of dinner that promises fermented delicacies, social anxiety in togas, and 17 toasts, too many. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? I always love seeing where in the world people are drifting off. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Because tonight, you're the guest of honor. You receive the invitation on a thin wax tablet, hand-delivered by a wide-eyed servant child who's barefoot and somehow already annoyed with you. The tablet is beautifully inscribed, formal, pretentious, filled with flourishes and honorifics that mean absolutely nothing, except that you are expected to attend. And be grateful. The host? A Roman senator. Name too long. Beard too oiled. Teeth too white to be trusted. You sigh. You already know what this means. An evening of lukewarm wine, aggressive olives, and conversational power plays disguised as flattery. But refusing isn't an option. Social hierarchy in ancient Rome is stricter than your great aunt's rulebook on wedding etiquette. Declining a dinner invitation from someone above your status is like sending a scroll that reads, "Please ruin my career." You consider faking an illness. Maybe the plague? It's popular this year. But no, they'd probably just send you healing herbs and then come visit out of passive-aggressive kindness, which would be worse. So, you accept. Psychologists still debate whether our modern fear of disappointing others stems from evolutionary group survival instincts or just centuries of people-pleasing dinners, like this one. You begin preparing hours before sunset. Roman dinner parties don't happen at dinner time. They happen at the theatrical, dramatic moment just before night fully settles. Because of course they do. You bathe. Twice. The first time to remove the actual dirt. The second, ceremonial, to wash away the peasant from your pores. Your hair is oiled, your skin scrubbed with a mildly abrasive mixture of salt and optimism. You rub on perfumes that smell like crushed flowers and ancient ambition. You slip into a fresh tunic, freshly whitened with chalky powder that leaves streaks on your sandals. The effect is less elegant philosopher and more ghost who has been doing laundry wrong. You look at your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. You look fine. You look acceptable. You look exactly like someone who will be placed far from the host at the dinner table. But you inhale. You smile. You remind yourself, it's just a few hours. You've survived worse. Probably. And with that, you step out into the Roman evening, warm, amber-hued, and filled with that faint city aroma of olive oil, whetstone, and distant goat. The dinner awaits, and you are not ready. Section 2. The street is alive with the sounds of sandals slapping cobblestone, and people pretending to be more important than they are. As you make your way toward the domus of Senator Publius Cassius, what of Arius, you pass vendors closing their stalls, neighbors arguing over whose goat is louder, and a flute player who seems aggressively confident for someone playing a single note. The air is heavy with summer, not just warm, but clingy, the kind of evening where even your shadow sweats. You try not to look too eager. nor too indifferent. You aim for that sweet spot, modesty, with just a hint of self-worth, like someone who knows they don't belong here, but won't spill wine on the floor. The domus appears at the end of the street like a theater set piece. Grand columns, marble lions, oil lamps, flickering like fireflies who only take tips in denarii. A doorman greets you with an expression somewhere between indifference and contempt. Perfectly Roman. You give your name. He checks a wax tablet with dramatic slowness, as if weighing your social value against a goat's. Eventually, he nods and steps aside. You're in. The atrium is grand. Too grand. The kind of grand that says, I inherited this from someone who conquered people. You try to appear unimpressed, but you're currently walking on mosaics, depicting epic battles. Under your feet, a man nearby is literally adjusting the firelight with a mirrored dish, just so the host's bust is lit flatteringly. The household slaves hover silently. They don't speak unless spoken to, and even then, only in whispers, as if your self-esteem might be startled. One of them offers you a towel soaked in rose water. You dab your forehead, wondering briefly if anyone has ever actually enjoyed rose water. You are guided to the vestibulum, the formal waiting area, where guests gather before being herded like perfumed cattle into the triclinium, the dining room. Here's where it begins. You are not seated. Not yet. Seating is a process, an art, a subtle but ruthless declaration of your social worth. The closer to the host, the higher your status. The further, the closer you are to being that guy who once overcooked a fish for a general. Psychologists still debate whether modern seating anxiety at weddings and conferences has roots in Roman banquets. But tonight, you feel it deeply. You are placed somewhere near the middle. Not an insult, but not a compliment either. You are, officially, pleasantly forgettable. You recline onto your assigned cushion, which is more like an aggressively flattened throw pillow, and attempt to look comfortable. You are not. The angle contorts your body in ways it wasn't built for. Your elbow is unsure what to do. Your feet feel like they're trespassing. You glance sideways. To your left, a man with an eyebrow like a dictator raises his wine cup and doesn't blink. To your right, a woman in peacock blue silk sighs dramatically, as if she's been assigned to sit next to a pothole. No pressure. And then, the host enters. Senator Publius Cassius, Whatavarius, a man whose toga has so many folds, it may have its own annex. He greets everyone loudly, as if volume equals charisma. His smile is practiced. His teeth, impossibly white, suspiciously white. He makes the rounds, throwing compliments like confetti, none of which feel sincere. When he reaches you, he says, "Ah, you're here. Excellent." You're not sure if it's a greeting or a warning. Then he moves on. You're left clutching your ceramic wine cup, trying to pretend you relaxed while sitting sideways on a damp cushion in the home of someone who likely collects gladiator teeth for fun. Dinner hasn't started yet, but already you're exhausted. Still, you made it this far. You remind yourself, you've done harder things. You've survived fevers, debates, sandals, with no arch support. Surely, you can survive this. Probably. Section 3, dinner, you soon learn, is not a single event. It is an unfolding, a performance, a prolonged theater of discomfort and subtle war games, all conducted from behind goblets and across platters of questionably edible delicacies. The triclinium, the formal dining room, is dimly lit, the only illumination coming from low-burning oil lamps and the occasional dramatic torch, placed as if to make shadows more judgmental. You can barely see your neighbor's expression, which is probably for the best. As is tradition, the host begins with a toast. And oh, what a toast it is. He raises his goblet, an ornate thing with handles shaped like sea monsters, and launches into a speech. Not a brief cheers, but a sermon, a story, a small novella. He opens with a quote from Homer, then transitions seamlessly into a recounting of a personal triumph in the Senate, followed by a tangent about the virtue of restraint. While gesturing dramatically with a cup of wine, he has no intention of restraining. You try to take a sip during a pause, but the toast goes on. The senator is still talking. There is no pause. There was never a pause. By minute 12, he's quoting himself. By minute 15, he's laughing at his own joke, which no one else understood, but everyone politely imitates with small, dry chuckles, like birds politely coughing. Psychologists still debate whether social mirroring is more about empathy or survival, but in Rome, it's definitely survival. At last, the toast ends, not because he's finished, but because someone nearby coughs too loudly, and that seems like a cue. He sits. Everyone claps softly. You join in, pretending to have enjoyed it. Then comes the first course. It's wine. Just wine. You have been reclining on this uneven cushion for nearly an hour, and the only thing served is warm, thin wine that tastes like raisins, dissolved in seawater. It arrives in a ceramic jug shaped like a goose, poured into cups without handles. It smells complex. You sip. You regret. A slave passes by, offering figs soaked in vinegar and honey. You take one, mostly out of panic. It tastes like sweet regret. You glance down the table. Someone farther ahead is already attempting to start a philosophical discussion. You can tell by their hand gestures. Broad, declarative, and slow, like someone delivering bad news with flair. On your other side, a man you don't know leans in and whispers, "Don't eat the oysters." Then he leans back, like nothing happened. You weren't planning on eating the oysters. Not anymore. The next dish arrives. Garum, that infamous Roman fish sauce, fermented, sharp, pungent. Its scent arrives before the plate does, like a threat. You breathe through your mouth. You realize your elbow is numb from the cushion, and your leg has fallen asleep. You shift. The cushion makes a noise. People glance. You pretend it wasn't you. You pretend you're someone else entirely. A storyteller begins reciting a poem at the far end of the room. You can't hear the words, but the rhythm is clear. Long, slow, overpronounced. The kind of poetry that uses the word lament unironically. The host snaps his fingers for silence. The poem continues. Someone yawns behind a napkin. You stare into your wine and wonder how long you have to stay to seem polite. Your stomach grumbles, not in hunger, but in protest. Dinner has only begun, and you're already considering escape. As the second course slithers its way toward you, yes, literally slithers, you begin to accept that Roman cuisine is more about spectacle than satisfaction. A silver platter arrives with what appears to be a roasted dormouse stuffed with something suspiciously soft. You stare at it. It stares back. Its tiny roasted paws are still folded politely, as if it died, hoping not to be a bother. You chew slowly, not because it's good, oh no, but because the texture is philosophical. Not quite meat, not quite memory, like chewing a metaphor. The host is watching, not just you, everyone. His eyes sweep the table with a predator's calm, like he's mentally rearranging who gets invited next time, based on chewing etiquette. You hold your posture, you nod thoughtfully, as if you've just discovered the hidden narrative arc of the dormouse. You even hum once, softly, to imply appreciation. To your left, someone claps too loudly at the end of the poem. To your right, a woman mutters, "It was better in Greek." Ah, Rome, where everyone's pretending, but some people are better at it than others. A slave quietly replaces your wine cup with one slightly larger. You did not ask for this. No one ever does. It's just protocol. Your inner monologue tries to distract you. You begin listing every item you've seen tonight that smells like regret. The garum, the overripe figs, that one senator's perfume, somewhere between burned sage and ambition. Psychologists still debate whether smell is more tightly linked to memory than other senses, but you're pretty sure the scent of this dinner party will linger in your nightmares. A new dish arrives, boiled cabbage and lamb brain, together, like they were meant to be. You think about how much you miss soup, just normal soup. Across the table, a man in a purple striped toga begins a loud debate about Stoicism. Not the philosophy, the fashion. Apparently, Seneca once wore a tunic, so minimalist it started a movement. The table nods reverently. Someone next to you offers an unsolicited comment about your sandals. They're quite functional, they say, as if describing a donkey. You thank them, because you're polite and mildly afraid. A sudden crash interrupts the flow. A platter has tipped. Oysters spill across the mosaic floor like damp regrets. No one laughs, not even nervously. The host frowns slightly, not at the mess, but at the disruption. The moment has lost its rhythm. You see a slave being led away, gently by the arm, and you don't ask where. Another toast begins. You consider hiding under the table. Instead, you sip the new wine. It tastes like disappointment, aged in guilt. You realize you've been holding your breath for 20 minutes. You exhale slowly. The room does not change, but you do. Because slowly, subtly, you begin to understand this isn't a dinner, it's a performance. And your role? To endure it gracefully, without choking on fermented eel. You can do this. You've been through weddings with small talk. You've been through networking events with weak coffee. Surely you can survive Rome. You begin to notice the layers, not just of the food, but of the atmosphere. This isn't just dinner, it's theater soaked in ego and oil. Every guest is both audience and actor, performing casual delight while mentally calculating how close they are to the host, both geographically and politically. Your cushion sinks a little lower with each course, not literally, but emotionally. You find yourself sinking into a kind of social gravity, one where posture is everything, and smiling with your eyes is a survival strategy. Another course arrives. This one is quail, stuffed with dates and pine nuts, served atop a mysterious orange paste that might be squash or a mistake. You take a small bite and nod at no one in particular. That's the trick. You act like you're reacting to a flavor memory, so rich and nostalgic, you simply must close your eyes. In truth, it tastes like someone's attempt at sweetness. While blindfolded, you glance toward the head of the table. The host is in his element, laughing too loudly, gesturing with his wine cup, occasionally making eye contact with people, just long enough to imply, "I could ruin you." The poet is back. He's reciting something new, this time about a swan trapped in a storm. It is unclear if the swan is a metaphor or just unlucky. Either way, no one listens. They just nod slowly, eyes glazed. The woman beside you sighs. I miss my garden, she whispers, and for a moment, she's not a Roman noblewoman, just a tired soul who wants to be near plants and away from politics. You nod, not because you agree. You've never seen her garden, but you too miss things you can't name. Another toast. This one is shorter, only 6 minutes. It includes a joke about Greek sandals and ends with a pun that involves the word conquest. You try to smile, but it feels like a lowercase smile, just enough to qualify. Psychologists still debate whether humans evolved to feign interest as a bonding tactic, but in this moment, you're grateful for the ability. Next to you, a man tells you how important it is to appear effortless. He's visibly sweating through his tunic. You excuse yourself politely and make your way toward the fountain in the atrium. You're not supposed to leave the table, but if anyone asks, you'll claim a stomach concern, which, let's be honest, isn't entirely untrue. The fountain burbles quietly. It smells faintly of rose petals and irony. You breathe deeply. You touch the cool marble edge. For a moment, the noise from the triclinium fades, like closing a door in your mind. You are still at this dinner, but now you are also somewhere else, in this breath, in this quiet, and for a few moments, you don't have to chew or toast or pretend to understand a poem about birds. You just get to be. And that, in Rome, is a small miracle. You linger by the fountain a little longer than is polite, staring into the softly rippling water as if it might deliver answers, or perhaps a portal to another century. The rose petals float lazily, spinning in slow circles like noble thoughts that never quite land. Someone behind you clears their throat. It's a young servant, maybe 13, draped in linen that's too large and dignity that's too small. He doesn't speak, just gestures, a respectful, please return to the misery. You nod, because of course you do. No one escapes a Roman dinner that easily. As you re-enter the triclinium, the smell hits you anew. Roasted meat, stale wine, bronze oil lamps, expensive perfume, and the undeniable scent of too many feet reclined for too long. Your cushion awaits, still slightly warm, like a passive-aggressive cat. You settle in again. The next course is already being served. A meat jelly. You're not sure what kind of meat, and you're not sure why it's jelly. And honestly, you'd rather not know. Across the table, a senator is trying to impress someone by naming every known spice in reverse alphabetical order. He gets stuck on Zedori and starts sweating. Another guest offers a story about a time they ate falcon liver by mistake. It is unclear if the mistake was moral, culinary, or simply directional. Everyone nods. You try the jelly. It jiggles back. Psychologists still debate whether texture aversion is learned behavior or hardwired discomfort. You are certain it is both. The host claps his hands, and silence falls. A new guest is announced, late of course, and enters with the kind of theatrical flourish that suggests they've practiced this entrance in front of a mirror. It's Lucius, known primarily for being known. He's a collector of things, coins, scandal, attention. He wears a toga embroidered with his initials, subtle, like a peacock, wearing name tags. He air kisses the air near 3 people's cheeks and takes a seat directly across from you. He smiles like he knows something about you. You sip your wine. Lucius begins talking. Before he's even fully seated, he describes a recent trip to Alexandria, where he, accidentally, attended a symposium on mathematics. and ended up dancing with a priestess. The story lacks logic, but is rich in adjectives. You listen, because listening is safer than interrupting and safer than speaking. Someone down the table hiccups loudly and slurs something about poetry being overrated. Another voice counters with, "At least poetry never overcooked a quail." The room chuckles. Someone knocks over a goblet. A slave rushes in with a cloth. Before the wine finishes dripping, you close your eyes for a second, not out of sleepiness, but survival. The lamplight flickers, the sounds blur, and in that moment, you wonder if anyone here has ever truly rested, if any of them know what it means to sit at a table without pretense, without fear of being measured, weighed, and found performatively lacking. Maybe not, but you have a plan. It's not an escape, not yet, but it starts with a quiet breath and one more bite of mystery meat, because sometimes surviving is an act of quiet rebellion. The next dish arrives, and it's confusing on several levels. Visually, it resembles a wreath. Aromatically, it smells like old coins and regret. A slave quietly announces that it sows udder stuffed with spiced dormice and pine nuts. You nod solemnly, as though this were a normal sentence. You take a small portion, more to appease than to consume. The texture is exactly what you feared, both too soft and too chewy, as if the dish can't decide whether it's pudding or punishment. Across the table, Lucius is still speaking. He has seamlessly transitioned into describing the architecture of a villa he recently bought just to store scrolls. His voice is smooth, like wine that turns bitter after the swallow. Every sentence includes the word rare. Rare marble, rare figs, rare guests. You wonder briefly if he collects humility too, but perhaps it was out of stock. The woman in blue silk sighs again. Her eyes are half-lidded now, not with sleep, but with spiritual resignation. She glances toward the nearest oil lamp, as though calculating if it would burn fast enough to end the evening. Another toast. The senator across from you raises his cup and says, "To moderation." No one laughs, mostly because everyone knows he drank a bottle of Falernian wine by himself last week. You sip the new wine. It's slightly better, fruitier, less like vinegar with aspirations. Still, your stomach is beginning to feel like it's hosting its own dinner party. You send it a message of peace and understanding, but it responds with a low, skeptical growl. Psychologists still debate whether indigestion caused by social stress is psychosomatic or physiological. You, reclining here with a partially chewed pine nut lodged behind your molar, suspect it's both. The poet returns, now reading an epic about a dolphin who loved a fisherman. You think it's meant to be tragic, but his delivery is so slow, it's bordering on geological. Time begins to stretch. You're certain you've aged since the beginning of this poem. A fly circles your cup, then decides against it. Even insects know their limits. You look down the table. The cushions are visibly sinking, like boats in a rising tide of exhaustion. A man 2 places to your left appears to have fallen asleep with his eyes open, or he's reached a state of philosophical disassociation. You envy him. Lucius is now explaining his skincare routine, which involves honey, crushed pearls, and bathing in the compliments of others. The host chuckles loudly at something only he found amusing. Everyone else follows. The way leaves follow wind, reflexively and without purpose. You shift again. Your hip is numb, Your tongue is bored. Your brain is floating somewhere above the room, begging for something soft, something real, something not soaked in vinegar or ego. The next course is announced. It involves peacock. You are not surprised. You are not excited. You are still here. And somehow, that is its own quiet triumph. The peacock arrives, not sliced, not plated, but whole, fully feathered, beak closed in a polite grimace. Its tail, somehow preserved and splayed, glitters under the lamplight like pride itself roasted. You are not impressed. No one at this table is impressed. But everyone performs as if they are. A chorus of mild gasps, an "oh" or two, and a murmured "divine" from a woman who hasn't eaten anything since the appetizer. The host beams, delighted with himself. He makes a show of carving the first piece, as though he's sharing a myth rather than a protein. The knife glides through with exaggerated ceremony, revealing meat dyed a pinkish red with pomegranate juice and crushed rose petals. You cannot tell if this makes it better or worse. A thin slice is placed before you. You stare at it. It stares back. Metaphorically, you take a bite. It tastes decorative, like something intended for eyes, not tongues. There's a faint gamminess, like regret after flattery. It pairs surprisingly well with disappointment. Beside you, the woman in blue silk finally speaks above a whisper. The first time I had peacock, I wept. You turn to her. She shrugs. I was 8. It was my pet. You do not know whether to laugh or apologize, so you nod solemnly and refill her wine cup. Psychologists still debate whether absurdity is a coping mechanism or just the brain's final defense against nonsense. Either way, it's working. The conversation around you drifts into mythology. Someone claims to be descended from Venus. Another insists their uncle saw a satyr near the forum. Someone else begins a philosophical argument about whether Neptune would enjoy seafood. You chew slowly and pretend this makes sense. Lucius, now reclining deeper into his cushion, declares that he once dined with a senator who owned a personal seer. He told him when to chew, Lucius says chuckling, and when to stop. Few guests laugh. You do not. You're considering asking the nearest oil lamp to do you a small favor. A flute begins playing from somewhere behind the columns. A servant girl no older than 10 appears, trembling slightly, her fingers too small for the instrument she holds. She plays a slow, aching tune that sounds like what homesickness would hum to itself in the dark. No one applauds when she finishes. The silence is respectful, or perhaps stunned. It's the first moment of unperformed beauty all night. You want to thank her. You want to leave. You want a nap. But instead, you remain. The next dish is announced, and it involves brains. Not metaphorical ones, actual ones. Goat, probably. Maybe lamb. No one clarifies. You glance at your cup. Still full. Still warm. Still part of the show. You drink. You breathe. You survive. Because this dinner is no longer about food, or status, or even suffering. It's about endurance. Quiet, polite, historically accurate endurance. By now, your tongue has surrendered all opinion. It no longer registers texture, temperature, or hope. It simply complies, lifting, pressing, swallowing. A culinary soldier performing orders it did not approve. The goat brains arrive delicately portioned, served in little terracotta bowls that look like they were made during a rainstorm by someone deeply conflicted. The dish itself is grayish, with a faint sheen, like it was once a thought that solidified under pressure. You take a cautious bite. It's soft, predictably, like someone boiled an idea and forgot to season it. The texture reminds you of a conversation you once had at a party where no one knew why they were invited. Around you, conversation has shifted toward legacy. The senator to your left begins to list his children by name, age, and marriage potential. It sounds less like pride and more like a livestock inventory. Another guest responds by describing his family crest, which involves an eagle, a scroll, and something he calls divine balance. You're unsure what that means, but it sounds like something printed on expensive sandals. You nod respectfully and avoid eye contact with your bowl. Psychologists still debate whether family pride stems from genuine emotional bonds or social signaling. You begin to suspect it's often the latter, at least at Roman dinner parties, where no one remembers the name of the cook. Speaking of which, a new course arrives. Pulse, a type of porridge made from emmer wheat and salt. It's beige, extremely beige. The flavor is so neutral, it feels like you're eating the concept of hesitation. It is, without question, the most comforting dish you've had all evening. You let it linger on your tongue. For a moment, it's quiet. And then, a shout. Someone further down the table has taken offense, possibly over a misinterpreted comment about olive oil. You can't be sure, but it escalates quickly. A goblet is knocked over. A cushion is flung. A senator nearly slips on a grape. The host laughs, loud and theatrical. Ah, the spice of discourse, he bellows, as if this were a staged brawl. It isn't. Two guests are now gesturing with the kind of finger-pointing usually reserved for the courtroom mosaics. You chew slowly and pretend it's theater. One of the debaters dramatically reclines, as if fainting from offense, landing sideways on his neighbor's lap. The neighbor does not move. No one moves. Movement would imply engagement. Engagement would imply liability. You finish your porridge in silence. Someone starts playing the cithara again, badly, and in this moment you find peace. Not because the room is peaceful, it absolutely isn't, but because your expectations have adjusted so drastically that mild chaos now feels soothing. You are reclined, your elbow comfortably numb, your senses dulled by wine and social performance. You have transcended the dinner. You are now a background character in someone else's epic, and it's almost pleasant. You've begun to drift, not into sleep, not quite, but into that fuzzy liminal space between full awareness and total detachment, a kind of social purgatory, present in body, absent in spirit. Lucius is now debating someone over the ethical implications of lamp oil sourcing. You're unsure if he's sincere or just testing out his voice for the acoustics. It carries, regardless, like a well-trained duck. The peacock carcass has been removed, finally, though a feather remains on the floor, like a survivor of war. You watch it twitch in the breeze. It's the most honest thing here. A new dish arrives. Olives stuffed with tiny anchovies. They look like they're scowling. You eat one, and your mouth implodes. It's salt on top of brine atop vinegar, like someone condensed an ocean's worth of overreaction into a single chew. Psychologists still debate whether taste sensitivity is tied to personality traits. You wonder if being a highly sensitive person means you're simply more aware of when food tastes like punishment. You reach for water. There is no water, only more wine. Always more wine. Warm, insistent, and deceptively strong, like your inner critic with a toga. Across the table, someone is laughing a little too freely, not at a joke, not at anything in particular, just laughing. Their eyes are glossy. Their smile is a surrender. You suspect they've crossed over into a space beyond etiquette, that magical place where nothing matters, and even eel mousse tastes like victory. You're jealous. The host, of course, is still thriving. He has moved on to bragging about a recent letter from Cicero. Very flattering, he says, while casually biting into what may be a fig or a small purse. The musician strikes a wrong note and recovers poorly. Someone claps out of pity. Then comes the dish that makes you question all your life choices. Boiled ostrich with dates. The smell is bold, assertive, a little too confident for something that was never meant to be consumed with dates. You chew, slowly. You try not to taste. You nod to no one. A guest near the wall mutters, "Everything tastes like disappointment dipped in cinnamon." You'd toast to that if your arm could still lift. The oil lamps flicker. The room swims. You've reached the final stage. Disassociation with style, no longer participating, merely observing. A soft blur of excess and exhaustion. You are reclining, but it feels like floating. Someone says your name, but it doesn't stick. You're soup now, sentient, ancient soup. And yet, you're still here, still chewing, still surviving this aggressively decadent, performative, bizarrely humid ordeal. And that, dear soul, makes you a Roman of resilience. You wonder, idly, if anyone has ever actually left one of these dinners early, not because of scandal or exile or an unfortunate duel over fig placement, but simply because they were full, emotionally full, digestively full, existentially full. You doubt it. No one leaves before the final course. It's not tradition, it's obligation. To leave early would suggest weakness, or worse, rebellion. And rebellion ruins dessert. A bell rings somewhere out of sight. Not a big bell, but a delicate chime, like a suggestion dressed in silver. It signals the transition to the final act, the sweets, or what the Romans call sweets, which tonight includes honeyed locusts, pine nut custard, and a peculiar dish involving fermented dates stuffed with crushed black pepper. Yes, black pepper. You eye the platter suspiciously as it arrives. It looks innocent enough, like oversized raisins trying to look casual. But the moment you bite in, your tongue enters a new phase of grief. It's sweet, yes, but also aggressively spicy. Not in a chilly way, but in a "why are you shouting at me" kind of way. The pepper demands attention. It refuses to be background noise. It barges into your mouth like a senator with a vendetta. You drink more wine. It doesn't help. The woman in blue silk is humming now. A low, almost imperceptible melody. You suspect she's disassociating musically. You respect that. Lucius has taken off his outer tunic. Too warm, he explains. Even though no one asked. He's now in what might technically be a nightgown. A servant quickly folds his discarded fabric with reverence. Lucius toasts to her. "Best folder in Rome," he slurs. To your left, someone accidentally drops a candied almond down their toga. They do not retrieve it. They simply accept this as the almond's fate. Psychologists still debate whether fatigue lowers social inhibition or simply reveals true character. At this point, everyone here is operating at their most distilled selves, the purest forms of ego, exhaustion, and faintly burned honey. The host rises once more. "Let us end," he says dramatically. "With a tale. No. Yes. He begins. It is not a short tale. It involves Jupiter, a stolen goat, a confused oracle, and at least 3 metaphors about destiny that don't land. You try to listen. You do. But your eyes are heavy. Your mind is drifting. The words melt into a soft blur of. Then Jupiter said, and as the goat wept, and still, you remain seated, reclined, accepting the final layer of absurdity with the calm of a statue weathered by too many festivals. You've stopped trying to make sense of it. That was your first mistake. You're simply floating now, in time, in space, in faint, garum-scented dreams. You are not Roman. You are not hungry. No, you are stardust in a borrowed tunic, whispering to the ceiling, let it be over. The host is still speaking. His story has evolved, or perhaps devolved, into something involving Neptune, disguised as a dolphin, trying to seduce a nymph, disguised as a bunch of grapes. You're not entirely sure how the narrative got here. No one is. But everyone pretends to follow along, heads nodding rhythmically, like wine-soaked metronomes. The dessert plates are cleared. One falls. It shatters quietly on the mosaic floor, sounding like applause for the end of appetite. You take another sip of wine, mostly out of muscle memory. Your tongue no longer registers flavor. It simply catalogs sensation now. Warm, wet, present. The oil lamps sputter faintly. The shadows lengthen. It's well past midnight, though no one speaks of time. Roman dinner parties are not bound by clocks. They are bound only by the host's ego and the guests' capacity to pretend they are still entertained. A senator near the fountain begins to snore, gently, rhythmically, like a goat with asthma. No one wakes him. No one mentions it. In fact, his snoring may be the most honest contribution to the evening thus far. You notice that your cushion has molded itself to your body like a disappointed relative. It offers no support, but insists on staying close. Across from you, Lucius is attempting to quote Aristotle. He fails, twice, but continues on, as if accuracy is a vulgarity. The wise man, he slurs, knows when to, he waves a hand, leave the table of fools. He immediately takes another sip of wine. Someone claps. You rest your chin in your hand, elbow balanced on your knee, staring into the middle distance where ambition used to live. Psychologists still debate whether the phenomenon of ego fatigue, that mental exhaustion from prolonged self-control, applies to ancient social rituals. Tonight, you are a case study, a reclining monument to polite endurance. A faint breeze stirs the edges of the room, carrying with it the scent of spent candles, citrus rinds, and the last breath of overcooked lentils. The host finally sits. The story is over. You think. You hope. A bell rings again. This time, final. The slaves begin clearing plates with astonishing speed. A blur of quiet footsteps and metal on metal. They move like shadows, trained by disappointment. Lucius has fallen silent. The woman in blue silk is lightly dozing, upright, her hand still resting near her goblet, like a sentinel of etiquette. You blink slowly. You're still here. The dinner is ending, and somehow, you won. Not loudly, not dramatically, but privately, with grace. You outlasted the wine, the songs, the fish sauce, the political banter, the goat brain, the peacock. You made it. And in ancient Rome, that is its own kind of triumph. You rise slowly, like a scroll being unrolled in slow motion. Every joint clicks in soft protest. Your spine reminds you that reclining for hours on a tilted slab is less restful than advertised. Around you, the guests begin to stir. A gentle cascade of sighs, rustling fabric, and the sound of sandals meeting marble with regret. No one speaks loudly, no one celebrates. They simply rise, like people leaving a dream that wasn't entirely pleasant, but was too expensive to interrupt. The host remains seated, of course, basking in the fading glow of his own performance. He raises a final goblet, mostly to himself. To culture, he mutters, and drains it with flourish. A few guests mimic the gesture. Others simply nod, already mentally calculating how many days they'll need to recover from this. As you cross the atrium, a slave offers you a bowl of scented water for your hands. You accept it graciously, letting the coolness wash away the residue of honey, oil, and social tension. It smells faintly of lavender and something like freedom. Outside, the night air greets you like an old friend, crisp, quiet, and gloriously unperfumed. The sky is dark velvet, pricked with stars that don't care how close you sat to the host or whether you finished your porridge. They simply shine, undisturbed by the politics of peacocks. You walk slowly. The streets are nearly empty. A cat darts across the path, chasing something invisible. In the distance, a woman sings softly to herself while sweeping her doorway. It is, without question, the most sincere performance you've heard all evening. You breathe in deeply. Your lungs fill with something you didn't realize you'd been missing. Stillness. Psychologists still debate whether relief is more powerful than joy. But tonight, you know this. Stepping away from performance, from posture, from posturing, it's not just pleasant, it's sacred. You pass a fig tree and touch its leaves. Rough and cool beneath your fingertips. Real, unpolished. You smile. The dinner is behind you now, and with it, the strained laughter, the too warm wine, the sensory overload wrapped in grape leaves. Ahead lies your bed. Not a triclinium, not a status prop, but a place where no one will judge how you lie down. You can already feel the pillow, the soft weight of a blanket, the absence of Gurham. And when you finally do reach home, slip into the quiet, and close your eyes, you will know that you survived ancient Rome's greatest challenge. Not war, not politics, but dinner. You close the door behind you with a sigh so deep it echoes through your ribs. The latch clicks gently, a sound that might as well be a lullaby. After the clamor of ego and garum, the silence wraps around you like a cloak, heavy, soothing, undeniably yours. Inside your humble dwelling, everything is still. A single oil lamp flickers near the window, casting amber light across your quiet room. There are no mosaic floors here, no imported statues, just a mat, a blanket, and the feeling of being unseen for the first time all night. You remove your sandals one by one, slowly, reverently. Each strap unfastened feels like peeling away someone else's expectations. You sit on the edge of your sleeping mat and inhale the simple scent of wool and clean straw. This is real. No peacocks, no toasts, no poetry about livestock emotions, just the gentle sound of wind brushing against your shutters and the steady thump of your heart no longer performing for anyone. Psychologists still debate whether introversion existed in ancient cultures, but tonight you embody it like a philosopher who chose solitude over symposiums. You pour yourself a small cup of plain water. It tastes better than all the wine in Rome. Cold, clean, honest. Your body aches, not from labor, but from having held yourself in a shape that wasn't entirely yours for hours. The Roman dinner required angles, chin slightly raised, shoulders tilted just so, eyes open enough to look alert, but soft enough to appear modest. Now you are soft all over. You let yourself recline fully, spine settling into the mat like a scroll finally placed on its shelf. The air hums gently. You can almost feel your muscles uncoiling. The weight of performative cheer lifts off your chest like a wool cloak, shrugged onto the floor. The woman in blue silk flickers across your mind. Her sighs, her silence, her moment of humming. You wonder if she, too, is lying awake somewhere, staring at her ceiling, wondering why the peacock had to be whole. And Lucius, loud, glistening, overconfident Lucius. You imagine he is now narrating his dreams, mid-sleep, with the same conviction. A quiet laugh escapes you. Not a Roman laugh, not a polite one, a real one. Yours. And in the stillness of your room, beneath the tired stars of a city that never truly sleeps, you let yourself drift. Not from wine, not from overwhelm, but from the sheer, blessed peace of being alone. No social rank to uphold, no olives to decode, no philosophical arguments about soup, just the sound of your own breath, and maybe the faintest thought that tomorrow you'll have breakfast in silence, with bread that doesn't stare back. Your eyes begin to flutter as the last thoughts of the evening dissolve like breadcrumbs in wine. Not that you'll be touching wine again for a while, not after tonight. Your body has made that clear, and frankly, so has your dignity. The room around you quiets further, as if even the shadows are exhaling. The lamp by the window gives one last flicker before settling into its final glow. You watch it, half-lidded, mesmerized by the way the light dances along the clay wall, like a soft lullaby told in flickers instead of words. This, you think, is luxury. Not marble columns, not silver platters, but the right to exist without anyone watching. You've survived a Roman dinner party. You sat through the eels, the toasts, the passive-aggressive seating arrangements, and the wine-soaked philosophy debates. You outlasted the peacock. You outwitted the oyster. You didn't fall asleep on your garum. You did well. Not impressively, not heroically, but with quiet, determined presence. The kind that doesn't show up in epics or statues, but lingers in memory, like the final sigh before sleep. And now, let your shoulders sink a little deeper. Let the pillow welcome the shape of your head, like it's known you your whole life. Let the blanket wrap around you like the toga you wish you'd worn, soft, breathable, and not shared with strangers. Out in the city, torches sputter. Laughter fades behind stone walls. Even Lucius, somewhere, is probably asleep, dreaming of applause. But here, in your space, in your breath, you are untouched by noise, safe, forgotten in the best way. Tomorrow, Rome will still be loud. But tonight, you are not. Tonight, you are a guest at a better table, one with silence, stillness, and bread that does not debate you. So, let your thoughts drift like olive leaves on a lazy stream. Let your body go slack. Let your mind quiet itself, not with effort, but with relief, because the party is over, and you, dear soul, you are finally home. Morning arrives, soft and indifferent, filtering through the wooden slats of your window like an apology. The sky is a gentle slate gray, with streaks of quiet pink stretching lazily toward rooftops that have not yet begun their daily arguments with pigeons. You lie still, body swaddled in a cocoon of blanket and silence. There are no trumpets, no call to arms, just a faint breeze carrying the smell of someone else's breakfast, lentils maybe, and the distant clatter of a cart on uneven stone. It's a different kind of music, one your ears welcome. You stretch slowly, the way a cat might if it had spent the previous night curled awkwardly on a decorative pillow, listening to a senator recite a poem about livestock. Your shoulder cracks, your spine hums. Your body is gloriously your own again. Outside, the world begins to stir. Merchants begin to bicker gently. A rooster remembers it's late. Somewhere, a child is already demanding figs. Life resumes. But you stay in bed just a bit longer. Because today, you don't owe anyone a clever toast. You don't have to survive any more philosophical monologues disguised as dessert. You don't have to pretend to enjoy brain pudding or guess someone's social rank based on the density of their embroidery. You can be ordinary, which, in ancient Rome, is revolutionary. Psychologists still debate whether resting without guilt was ever truly possible in societies obsessed with status and legacy. But you, this morning, are doing exactly that. Lying flat, breathing slow, feeling no pressure to interpret metaphors about birds or pretend you enjoyed being called pleasantly forgettable. The world can wait. Let it knock. You will answer when your stomach feels like it, preferably once it's had something normal, like barley porridge or flatbread that doesn't have secrets. Eventually, your feet find the floor. The coolness grounds you. Your hands find your robe, soft, unassuming, and blessedly undecorated. You step into the morning like someone who's seen the belly of Roman luxury and quietly chosen plain toast. And that, in its own quiet way, is victory. You move through your modest home like a shadow still waking up. There's no mosaic beneath your feet, no servant waiting with rose water, no dramatic fountain whispering about conquest. Just wood, worn, creaky, honest wood that groans slightly beneath your steps, like it's been through things too. You like it here. The walls don't talk back. The furniture doesn't judge. The chair in the corner accepts your full weight without commentary. It squeaks only once, in a tone you choose to interpret as affectionate. You make a slow breakfast. A chunk of bread, some olive oil, a fig that looks like it had a good life. No elaborate presentation, no peacock tail. Just food, for eating, not for performance. As you chew, your thoughts wander, not with urgency, but with curiosity, like a dog sniffing a new path. You remember the woman in blue silk and wonder what she's doing this morning. Sitting at her own window, maybe, untangling her hair, dreaming of dirt under her fingernails, instead of pearls around her neck. You think of Lucius. He's probably recounting last night as dinner to an audience of two reluctant cousins and one exhausted tortoise. And then he's probably saying, "The dolphin appeared again." You sip your water and offer a small, private toast to surviving social chaos with both eyebrows intact. Psychologists still debate whether self-deprecating humor is a form of emotional regulation or simply how clever people stay sane. But in this moment, it feels like both. You glance outside. The sun is higher now, painting rooftops in honey and stone. You see a woman carrying a basket of onions, a boy leading a goat, a cat doing nothing with passion. Life continues. Not the kind of life that earns statues or songs, but the kind that keeps you soft, kind, awake in the right ways. You realize suddenly that last night was not just absurd, it was instructive. You now know what matters. You now know that you prefer honest crumbs to ornamental cakes. You now know that the quiet, when chosen, tastes sweeter than imported wine. And for the first time in a while, You feel full, not stuffed, not bloated, but full in the way only truth can feed you. You step outside, sandals soft against the stone, the sun warming your shoulders, like a friend who has finally learned how to hug without making it weird. The city is fully awake now. Vendors shouting, donkeys refusing, someone somewhere loudly misquoting Virgil. But here, on your street, everything feels human. There's a woman laughing too loud at a joke about cabbage. A man sweeping his threshold with more conviction than necessary. Two kids racing with sticks and imagination. No garum, no cushions, no layers of meaning hiding under roasted dormice. Just people, being. You greet your neighbor, a baker with flour in his hair, and no concept of boundaries. He waves a dough-covered hand and shouts, "Still alive, eh?" You nod. Barely. He laughs. "That's Rome." You chuckle, and for once, it doesn't feel like performance. At the corner, a stall sells citrus and salted almonds. You buy both, not because you need them, but because they're real. Small, unpretentious, honest bites of life. As you walk back, you pass someone describing last night's dinner in dramatic detail to an audience of pigeons. And then, they declare, the peacock exploded in color. The pigeons are unimpressed. So are you. Psychologists still debate whether memory distorts under the influence of ego or merely rearranges itself for better storytelling. Either way, you're content to let last night dissolve gently in your mind, like a drop of honey in warm water. At home, you light a small clay lamp, not because you need to, but because the ritual feels grounding. The flame dances gently, unbothered, non-performative. You sit near it with your almonds and citrus, legs stretched, breath soft. No one is watching. You're not being evaluated. You don't need to wear a tunic that speaks louder than your voice. You don't need to quote a poet to be heard. You're just here, chewing something that crunches in a satisfying way, in silence that feels earned. And in this quiet, you realize last night wasn't a failure. It was a lesson in excess, in artifice, in everything you do not want to become. And now, under a smaller sky, in a smaller room, with smaller meals, you feel larger than you ever did beneath chandeliers of oil and ego. Later, you find yourself sitting at your small table with a wax tablet in front of you. Not for business, not for debt, not even for poetry. Just reflection. You drag the stylus slowly across the surface, forming words that don't have to impress anyone. Do not attend dinners where the food has a name. You smile. The tablet isn't for anyone else to read. You're not Cicero. You're not crafting a speech to be etched into marble. You're writing because your mind is quieter when your hands are busy. You pause. Then you write, "Bread tastes better when no one is watching you chew." Somewhere outside, a street musician begins to play a soft tune on a lyre. It's slightly off-key, but sincere. You hum along, not because you know the song, but because it asks nothing of you. You think about status, about how the closer people got to the host last night, the less they seemed to enjoy themselves, like moths circling a flame, pretending it's warmth instead of combustion. You were far enough to breathe. Psychologists still debate whether proximity to power enhances self-worth or diminishes authenticity. But deep inside, you already know the answer. You lived it. You didn't get the best cushion, or the finest cup, or the warmest glance, but you got something else. Distance, perspective, and, most luxuriously, space to leave with your dignity intact. A neighbor knocks, asking if you'd like to share lentils. You say yes, mostly because it is the first invitation in days that doesn't come with a dress code or a hidden agenda. You bring your almonds. The lentils are overcooked. The wine is sour. The company, unpolished, imperfect, perfect. You talk about goats, about clouds that look like angry senators, about how sometimes figs taste like they have secrets. No one toasts, no one recites, no one performs. You eat until your stomach sighs, you laugh until your jaw relaxes, and you realize this is the real feast. Later that night, long after the lentils and laughter have faded, you lie awake beneath a modest blanket, staring at a ceiling that makes no promises. It creaks once in the wind, like an old friend settling into sleep. You're not tired yet, but you're also not restless. Just still, a kind of calm that only follows after surviving noise not designed for you, after witnessing the grand theater of status and choosing not to audition for a part, after digesting more than peacock and vinegar, after digesting the absurdity of it all. You trace patterns in the air with your finger. Imaginary stars, fig leaf, maybe the curve of a smile that felt real. You think about all the questions no one asked last night. Not one person inquired how anyone was sleeping these days. No one shared their latest dream. Everyone was too busy trying to appear fascinating to risk sounding human. Here, now, you feel human. Delightfully, gloriously, unimpressively human. You remember the servant girl with the flute, her fingers trembling, her song quiet, the way the room stilled, the way the silence afterward was the loudest honesty all night. You hope she got to eat something warm. Psychologists still debate whether small, authentic gestures leave deeper impressions than grand performances. But the answer is already written in your bones. You recall how good the lentils were, not because they were seasoned well. They weren't, but because they came with ease, with bad jokes, with no menu recitation. You pull your blanket tighter. A breeze sneaks through the shutter. You smile, just slightly, at the thought that somewhere out there, Lucius might be pacing a marble hall, trying to remember if dolphins are mammals. You close your eyes. You don't need applause to feel seen. You don't need perfume to feel valued. You don't need a throne to rest. Here, in your small room, with your unadorned life and your full belly, you feel more Roman than any senator in silk, because peace, like bread, is better when it's shared in silence. The next morning, you wake slowly. No urgent knocking, no scrolls demanding reply, just the gentle murmur of a city stretching into the day, and the smell of someone nearby baking something with too much fennel. You blink against the soft light filtering through your shuttered window, the kind of light that doesn't shout, but rather whispers. Whenever you're ready, you sit up. Your body feels lighter today, like it shed something heavy during the night. Not muscle or moisture, but expectation. You didn't know how much you'd been carrying until it was gone. Outside, the air is mild and unhurried. You hear the distant splash of someone drawing water from a public fountain. A boy shouts at a chicken. A dog barks once, then changes its mind. You step out in your tunic. No embroidery, no belt of symbolic snakes, no sandals designed to impress anyone but your arches. You walk slowly, not toward anywhere in particular, just toward. At the market, a woman sells apricots with the kind of face that says, "I don't care if you buy them." You like her immediately. You buy two. The first one is bruised. Sweet anyway. The second one tastes like childhood, though you're not sure whose. You pass by the forum, and notice someone arguing loudly about wheat prices. You do not stop. You do not need that kind of energy in your morning. A pigeon lands on your shoulder for 3 seconds, decides against it, and leaves. That, too, feels symbolic. Psychologists still debate whether contentment is the absence of stress or the presence of presence. But in this moment, with fruit juice on your fingers and sun on your face, the answer seems obvious. You turn down a street you don't usually walk. There, between two buildings, leaning slightly toward each other, like gossiping uncles, you find a tiny garden. Wild, unkempt, perfect. There's no gate, no sign, just a patch of green where someone once planted hope and forgot to check back. You step in, sit on a low stone, watch a beetle do its thing with pride, and you think to yourself, this is the opposite of a dinner party. And you don't mean that as an insult. You linger in the garden longer than you meant to. Time, for once, feels optional. The stone under you is cool. The leaves above flicker with a lazy rhythm. And no one here expects you to be interesting. You pluck a blade of grass and roll it between your fingers slowly. It smells like simplicity. Nearby, a lizard darts across a sun-warmed patch of dirt like it's running late for something. But you suspect it just enjoys the drama. You smile. Not the trained smile of a dinner guest. Not the polite twitch you wear when someone mispronounces your name with confidence, but a real one. Your body feels softer, your thoughts less rehearsed. You remember that people are allowed to be quiet without being mysterious, and kind without being clever. The dinner party made you forget that. From your pocket, you pull the apricot pit from earlier. It's smooth, dry, shaped like the punctuation mark of a moment, well lived. You consider planting it here, not because you need a tree, but because some seeds deserve a chance to rest where laughter once happened. You press it gently into the dirt and pat it once, like a goodnight kiss for something small and brave. Psychologists still debate whether ritual, even the tiniest kind, soothes the nervous system or simply gives it something quiet to believe in. Either way, your hands feel calmer now. The sky overhead is a soft blue, like linen left out to dry. A bird calls once, and its echo disappears behind a crooked chimney. You wonder what the senator is doing right now. Probably not planting fruit pits. Probably not smiling at lizards. Probably somewhere drafting another menu with too many adjectives. And that's fine. You don't need to fix him. You only needed to survive him. And you did. A breeze picks up, rustling the taller grasses, like applause from the earth itself. You stand, stretch, and thank the garden with a nod. It doesn't nod back, but it also doesn't expect you to stay. That's how you know you're welcome. You walk away lighter, not because anything changed, but because you did. Back on the street, the day is in full swing, not frantic, just rhythmic. Rome breathes in patterns. Vendors call out names you don't know. Children shout at pigeons, who shout back with equal energy. Someone argues over the price of leeks, as if their lineage depends on it. You weave through it all like a whisper, not avoiding, just not needing to announce yourself. You pass a man selling sandals, with soles so thin they might qualify as opinions. He tries to make eye contact. You smile, but keep walking. You already have sandals. They've already been judged. You both survived. At the bathhouse, you consider going in, not for gossip or grandeur, just for heat and water and the chance to float. Inside, the scent of steam and eucalyptus, or maybe just overcooked celery, hits your nose. You undress, leave your tunic folded with more care than it's probably used to, and step into the tepidarium. Warmth surrounds you like a good story, slow, enveloping, real. You sink into the water and exhale. The bath is half full. A few murmured conversations drift by. Nothing theatrical. No one quoting Plato through bubbles. Just voices. Gentle. Human. You close your eyes. And for a while, there's no yesterday. No Peacock. No Lucius. Just the quiet hum of recovery. You overhear someone talking about a neighbor's cat. Someone else wonders if the rain will hold off. One woman sighs and says she wishes people would stop seasoning everything with ambition. You almost applaud. Psychologists still debate whether communal bathing contributes more to physical hygiene or emotional reset. You're beginning to suspect it's both. You float a little. The water makes everything feel weightless, especially your thoughts, especially the ones that used to pretend they liked fig-stuffed brains. Time passes in no rush. When you finally rise, skin pruned, lungs full of air that smells like mild soap and other people's relief, you feel reset, not reborn, just realigned. You dry off slowly, dress without urgency, step back into your tunic like it's a new decision. And when you step back onto the street, still damp, hair a little wild, sandals dusty, you realize you no longer carry the dinner with you. It stayed in the past, where it belongs. The sun is beginning its slow descent now, gilding the tops of buildings with a honeyed glow. Shadows stretch long across the cobbled street, like tired guests trying to leave early. You walk without purpose, which, in a city obsessed with status, is the most rebellious thing you can do. You pass a man painting a door red, not for beauty, but because red was on sale. He hums a song without a tune. It fits. Further down, a group of teenagers are trying to impress one another with exaggerated tales of their uncles. One claims his uncle once insulted a tax collector and lived. Another swears his uncle was bitten by a cursed goose and gained insight into the afterlife. You don't interrupt. You just walk through their myth-making like a breeze, smiling as they exaggerate history into something more palatable than Peacock. A few blocks later, you find a shaded bench. Old, slightly tilted, ignored. Perfect. You sit, you breathe, and then you take out your wax tablet again. This time, the words come quickly. Being remembered is overrated. You pause, then add, being present is enough. A cat jumps onto the far end of the bench, looks at you as if you interrupted something, then curls into itself and sighs. You take that as approval. Psychologists still debate whether cats absorb our moods or simply reflect them. Either way, this one feels like a mirror. You write more, not about the dinner. That story is already told. You write about gardens, about lukewarm soup, about how silence, when chosen, is richer than applause, about how fig trees don't care what toga you wear. A man walks by carrying a lute wrapped in cloth. A child walks behind him, mimicking his steps exactly. Neither of them speaks. You imagine the host from last night, now probably reclining in another triclinium, planning his next edible metaphor. You hope his fish sauce clots. You hope Lucius forgets the punchline halfway through his story. You hope the woman in blue silk is lying in a field somewhere, humming herself to sleep. The cat twitches in its nap. You smile and write one final line before the light fades completely. Quiet is a feast too. Dusk settles over Rome like a blanket that has seen too many emperors. The sky turns a soft, gray pink, and the city sighs. Not loudly, but in the way old places do. The exhale of a stone and memory. You rise from the bench, stretching slowly, joints murmuring polite protest. The cat remains, now fully in charge of the space. You nod to it in farewell. It does not respond. As you walk, torches flicker to life. Along the street, their glow is gentle, unbothered, far removed from the dramatic lamps of last night. These flames are meant to light paths, not egos. You pass a vendor packing up his stall. He offers you a bruised pear for free. Too soft for sale, he says with a shrug. You accept it gratefully. It is, unsurprisingly, the best pear you've had in months. Psychologists still debate whether gratitude rewires the brain or simply opens a window. Either way, yours feels open now, wide enough for fresh air, narrow enough to keep out Lucius. Back home, you light your lamp. Just one. You no longer feel the need for unnecessary glow. You sit by the small wooden table and look again at your wax tablet. You don't write this time. You just reread what's there. It doesn't need editing. It wasn't meant for sharing. It just needed to exist. Like you. A soft knock at the door. Your neighbor, holding a crust of bread and a shy smile. Too much for one, she says. You take it. You eat together in silence, breaking pieces off with your hands. No ceremony. No courses. Just warm bread and human company. And when she leaves, with a nod and no farewell, you feel fuller than you ever did with a dozen dishes in front of you. You clean your hands with a simple cloth, wash your face with cool water, crawl into your blanket with the grace of someone who has nothing left to prove. And as you close your eyes, you remember the final words the host spoke last night. To culture, he said. You smile into your pillow. You have your own culture now. It involves quiet pears, soft bread, unedited wax, and the kind of sleep that doesn't require permission. That night, you dream not of golden goblets or togas lined with political ambition, but of barley fields waving under a breeze, and a table under a fig tree, and laughter so gentle it doesn't echo, it settles. In the dream, you are barefoot. No one minds. The ground is warm, the figs are ripe, and no one has anything to prove. You wake slowly, like a ship returning to shore after a quiet voyage. Your room greets you with its usual understated dignity. The walls are still cracked. The window still squeaks. The world hasn't changed, but you have. You rise not with urgency, but with purpose. Not to perform, not to impress, just to live this one day better than the last. Outside, someone is already sweeping. Another is singing off-key. You add your yawn to the morning chorus and smile. Breakfast is simple. Cheese, an olive, a crust of bread. The olive tastes bold. The cheese tastes like it's not sure if it's ready yet. You admire its honesty. You eat at the table by your window. No cushion, no peacock feathers. Just the view of a crooked roof and a clothesline fluttering like surrender. Psychologists still debate whether routines ground us or restrict us. But this morning, your small rituals feel like roots. A knock at the door. It's the baker. He forgot your name again. He never really learned it. But he hands you a fresh roll, mutters something about gratitude, and disappears. The roll is warm. You hold it with both hands like a treasure. You realize you haven't thought about Lucius in hours. You realize you haven't thought about impressing anyone in days. You realize that peace doesn't, tea, arrive with trumpets. It slips in through cracked windows and unremarkable moments. You tear the bread gently, chew slowly, swallow with reverence, and smile, because this is the kind of feast that leaves you hungry only for more of this. Not more stuff, not more noise, just more of the real. More of what doesn't need a name card or an audience. More of what you carry now, not in your hands, but in your spine, in your sigh, in the quiet way you walk, without hurrying. As the day unfolds, you find yourself returning to the garden, not out of habit, but out of magnetism. Some places pull you gently, like a memory that wants to become a ritual. The patch of green is just as you left it, overgrown, uneven, perfect. A new flower has bloomed, small and unaware of how political beauty can be. You sit on your usual stone. It welcomes you like a friend who doesn't ask questions. You breathe, long, slow, deliciously uneventful. You watch ants carry something too large for their ambition. They cooperate anyway. A nearby vine leans just slightly more into the sun than it did yesterday. Progress. You lean back, arms stretched, head tilted skyward. The clouds drift lazily. One looks like a senator mid-speech. You squint until it dissolves. You brought nothing with you this time. No tablet, no plans. Just yourself. And you, surprisingly, feel like enough. A girl passes by, glancing in curiously. You nod. She doesn't enter, just keeps walking, humming to herself. Not a performance, just a moment passing through. Psychologists still debate whether solitude heals or merely hides. But as your shoulders drop further into ease, you decide it might do both. And maybe that's the point. You lie back on the patch of grass. The earth beneath you is uneven, but honest. There are small stones pressing into your spine. They don't hurt. They just remind you you're real. Your fingers trail through wild clover. Your thoughts drift through wild memories. Not of the dinner, but of your quiet defiance during it. The way you chewed slowly, with intention. The way you survived the toast to moderation. The way you didn't flinch when Lucius declared olives a metaphor. You chuckle now, not loudly, just enough to shake a bird from the branches above. It doesn't scold you, just flaps once, then moves on. You close your eyes again, just for a moment, because this is rest, not as escape, but as return, to something softer, to something saner, to something that doesn't require applause. You spend the afternoon quietly rearranging your space, not to impress, not for productivity, just to feel like your surroundings match your insides. Less chaos, more kindness. The blanket you slept in now drapes over a chair. The chair now sits near the window. The window now shows a street that feels smaller, but more familiar. It's not decor, it's alignment. You dust a shelf you hadn't touched in weeks, not because it was dirty, but because the motion feels like self-care disguised as maintenance. Outside, someone drops a basket. Fruit rolls across the stones. No one panics. The fruit is retrieved, dusted, eaten. You watch with quiet admiration. You light a small candle, even though it's still daylight, because rituals don't ask for logic. They ask for presence. Psychologists still debate whether environment shapes inner peace or simply reflects it. But today, the glow in your room feels like both cause and consequence. You brew a mild tea, herbs you don't know the names of, steeped slowly. It smells like memory and something about to be forgiven. You sip slowly. No one narrates this moment. No applause, no toast, no metaphor about olive oil. And that's exactly what makes it sacred. Later in the day, you find yourself walking, not toward anything, not from anything, just walking. The kind of walk that has no destination, but still feels like progress. Your feet make soft sounds on the stone, like secrets being told to the earth. The air is cooler now, the kind that nudges you gently and says, "You made it through." You believe it. A breeze ruffles your tunic. Somewhere, a flute plays a single note and then gets embarrassed and stops. You smile for both of you. You pass by a narrow alley you've never noticed before. It curves like a question mark. You take it, because what's the worst that could happen? Another metaphor? Instead, you find a tiny shop with no name. Inside, a woman sells candles made of things that used to be alive. Herbs, honey, resin, lavender. She doesn't greet you. She just nods like she was expecting you all along. You pick up one candle that smells like early morning on laundry day, and another that smells like someone else's childhood. You buy both. Back on the street, you carry the bag like it contains something heavier than wax, something like softness made solid. Psychologists still debate whether smell is memory or imagination. You decide it's both. The past whispering to the present, "You're safe now." You pass the bakery again. The baker waves with dough still stuck to his elbow. You nod like you understand what that means. And maybe you do, because today, for no reason at all, the city feels like it's not trying so hard. The people are a little slower. The air is a little kinder. And your mind, once a stage for endless performance, is now just a quiet room with a flickering candle. Evening returns gently, like a friend who knows not to knock. The light fades in slow gradients across the rooftops, and the sounds of the city soften into their twilight dialect. Murmurs, clinks, a single door closing with dignity. You're back home. The candles you bought earlier now sit on your windowsill. You light one. It flickers with more confidence than you expected, as if grateful to have a purpose. The room fills with a scent you can quite name, something between fresh parchment and old hugs. It makes you breathe slower without asking you to. You sit cross-legged on the floor. No cushion, no posture check, just you and the quiet. You run your finger along the spine of a closed book. You're not going to read it, not tonight, but its presence is enough. In the corner, your wax tablet still holds your words from earlier. You read them again. They still hold. Psychologists still debate whether writing helps us understand ourselves or simply gives shape to what we already knew. You exhale, unsure, but satisfied. Dinner is a piece of bread and a slice of soft cheese. The cheese is a little too warm, the bread a little too hard. Both are perfect. You chew slowly. Outside someone sings. Off-key, loudly. It's awful. You grin. Because you're not at that dinner anymore. You're not pretending to enjoy sea urchin pudding. You're not nodding at metaphors you don't believe in. You're home. The candle pops once. You thank it for its service. And as the shadows tuck themselves around your furniture, you realize there is no performance left in you. Only presence. Only the kind of quiet that echoes gently, like a well-told truth. You climb into bed. The blanket smells like sun and softness. You pull it up to your chin and close your eyes. And for the first time in a long time, you don't fall asleep. You allow sleep to find you. Sleep finds you like mist, slow, subtle, without fanfare. And when morning returns, it does so kindly. There is no urgency in your limbs, no battle in your chest, just the gentle awareness that you've rested, really rested. You open your eyes to the soft gray of pre-dawn. It's not yet light, but it isn't dark either. That in-between time where everything feels possible and nothing demands your attention. You lie there for a while, wrapped in warmth, not out of laziness, but out of reverence. This stillness is sacred now. Eventually, you sit up. Your feet meet the floor with a softness they didn't used to have. Your body moves like it's been forgiven. You brew something warm. Doesn't matter what. The ritual is what matters. Steam curls into the air like a quiet intention. You sip, slowly, thoughtfully. Outside, the street is hushed. Even the pigeons are slow to start. You hear a broom scraping gently across stone, a door creaking open, the distant click of someone starting their day. But inside, all is still. Psychologists still debate whether healing is measurable or merely noticed in hindsight. But you notice it now, in your breath, your shoulders, your willingness to sit without filling the space. You take out your wax tablet again. The words you wrote are still there, still true. You add only one. Enough. No flourish, no follow-up, just that. Enough. Because you are. You eat a small breakfast, savoring each bite without rushing to the next. There is no banquet waiting, no host expecting your laughter, no chair assigned to define your value. There is only this. You, awake, alive, unimpressively magnificent. And when the sun finally lifts itself over the edge of the city, you greet it, not like a performer, not like a philosopher, but like a person who once sat through too much and now chooses just enough. Later that morning, you wander into the marketplace. It smells like spice and bread and people making decisions they didn't plan to. The stalls are alive, not with fanfare, but with rhythm. Apricots stacked like promises, pottery arranged like hope, fabric folded like secrets. You aren't shopping for anything. You're just letting your eyes linger, letting your feet follow your breath. A woman selling dried lavender nods toward you. You nod back. No pitch, no price, just a shared understanding that sometimes being seen is enough. You pause at a stall with hand-bound scrolls. Not expensive, not rare, just things someone made slowly. Their edges are uneven, and that makes them feel true. You run your fingers across one with a cover pressed from crushed fig leaves. It smells like patience. You don't buy it, not because you don't want it, but because part of you has realized that not everything you connect with needs to be possessed. You continue walking. You pass a group of children, drawing spirals in dust with sticks. They look up, briefly, as if to see if you'll stop them. You don't. They return to their spirals, and you smile, because not everything needs fixing. Psychologists still debate whether contentment is a state or a skill. But here, among olives and oregano and unnecessary shouts over lentils, it feels like a language you're finally beginning to speak. A man offers you a slice of melon. You eat it standing up, juice running down your wrist. You don't apologize. You lick your hand. He grins. You grin back. No lessons, no metaphors, just fruit. Just now, you leave the market with nothing in your hands but something quiet in your chest. Something like wholeness. And as you walk back through the same streets you've always known, they feel slightly changed, not because the city has shifted, but because you have. You're not louder, not bolder, just clearer. And sometimes that's all it takes. Back home, you set your sandals neatly by the door, not out of ritual, but out of respect. They carried you through yesterday's theater and today's quiet clarity. They've earned stillness. You wash your hands slowly in a bowl of cool water, not because they're dirty, because the motion soothes. The way the water curls over your knuckles reminds you that the body has its own memories. You let it rinse away everything you don't need to carry into this moment. You dry your hands on a towel that smells faintly of sun. That smell, not lavender, not perfume, just clean, is the kind that doesn't try too hard. It simply says, "You're here now." You sit by the window again. No book, no writing, just breath. Outside, someone is fixing a cartwheel. You watch them not for entertainment, but because watching someone focused on a simple task feels like truth in motion. You sip another cup of whatever tea you made earlier. It's gone slightly cold. It still works. There's a loaf of bread on the table. You don't cut it, you tear it. Like it's a conversation, not a performance. Psychologists still debate whether small repeated choices can rewire the mind toward peace. You're not sure how much rewiring you've done, but today, everything feels less tangled. A breeze slips through the open window. It nudges a leaf across the floor. You don't chase it, you let it go. Somewhere in your thoughts, Lucius tries to tell another joke. You place a polite curtain over him. He can stay at the party. You're here instead, in this moment, this slow room, this bread, this breath. And when the candle from last night flickers in the corner, still half burned, you nod to it like a friend who stayed the night and ask nothing in return. Because that's what peace looks like. Not a rival, but company that doesn't demand anything from you. Afternoon stretches long and lazy across your ceiling, and you let it. The light moves slowly through the room, like it's browsing, not shopping. You lie on the floor, arms out, back flat, eyes drifting between the dust motes, and nothing at all. There's no need to be productive. No one's watching. No one's timing you. You're not falling behind. You're exactly where you are. The silence hums, not like an absence, but like a presence that's been waiting patiently for you to stop performing. You count 5 deep breaths, not to relax, just to listen to yourself exist. Outside, a neighbor laughs. It's the good kind of laugh. Cracked, sudden, not pretty. You smile. It reminds you of the way you laughed the moment the peacock's tail appeared at dinner. You didn't mean to, but the absurdity leaked out of you. You roll over. The floor is cool. You press your cheek against it and pretend you a piece of bread, letting go of the oven. Psychologists still debate whether surrender is a sign of maturity or defeat. But this deliberate lying down in the middle of the day, feels like protest and prayer rolled into one. You close your eyes, just for a moment. No music, no guide, just the internal shift of tension, leaving the body like guests who overstayed their welcome. You imagine the inner critic, the one who used to comment on your posture, your productivity, your overcooked thoughts. He's still there, but now he's sitting in a corner, reading quietly, sipping tea he didn't make. You let him stay. You just don't offer him a microphone. You stay on the floor for longer than necessary, because necessary is not the measure anymore. Desire is. Softness is. Enough is. Eventually, you rise, not because you must, but because you're ready. You open the door and step outside with the same care you once reserved for entering temples. The street greets you, unchanged, and yet something inside you steps onto it differently. Not smaller, but softer. You take the long way to nowhere, past the bakery, where the day's last loaves sit in quiet defiance of urgency, past the tailor's shop, where thread hangs like punctuation in the doorway, past a man arguing with a goose. The goose appears to be winning. You stop at the small stone wall by the olive grove. It isn't grand. It doesn't overlook anything dramatic, but it's wide enough to sit on and quiet enough to hear yourself think. So you do. You think. Not about problems, not about to-do lists, just about now. The air is warm, but carries a subtle hint of evening. Somewhere nearby, someone is cooking onions. Somewhere farther, someone is regretting their poetry. You sit, knees pulled up, chin resting on them, and in the silence, a memory surfaces. Uninvited, but welcome. A moment from the dinner, when the servant girl dropped a cup and time paused. No one laughed, no one scolded, everyone waited. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between all of you. The rare understanding that imperfection is the only honest language. You close your eyes. You feel it again. The soft terror of being seen. The softer relief of not being judged. Psychologists still debate whether vulnerability is weakness or the birthplace of strength. But sitting here now, half sunlit and whole in your quiet, you understand it's not either. It's just true. A breeze nudges your hair across your face. You let it. You think about nothing for a full minute, which is everything. And when you finally stand to head home, you take the even longer way back. Not because you're lost, but because for once, you don't mind wandering. By the time you return home, the sky is tinted with lavender and ash. Not dramatic, just quiet, like a thought you almost forgot to think. You close the door behind you without ceremony. No sigh, no symbolic pause, just the soft thud of arrival. You set down nothing because you carried nothing. And yet, you feel lighter. The room welcomes you the way soft clothing does, without needing to flatter you, just ready to be lived in again. You sit on the edge of your bed and undo your sandals slowly, not because your feet hurt, they don't, but because every untie feels like the release of a tension you didn't know was still tucked around your ankles. You stand and stretch. A spine pops. A shoulder hums. Your body agrees. This is the right place. The candle you lit earlier has melted into a shallow puddle of light. You relight it, not to see, but to remember that warmth doesn't need a reason. You drink a small glass of water like it's a ceremony, because it is. Psychologists still debate whether awareness grows in stillness or emerges from repetition. You suspect it's both, because this moment, this tiny ritual of re-entry, feels like both pause and continuation. You sit on the floor with your back against the wall, just breathing, just watching how the shadows now fall differently across the room. You think about the host from the dinner, not with judgment, just curiosity. What is it like to build your life out of impressions, to speak in performances, to feast in metaphors? You hope he's resting tonight. You hope he's letting someone else toast, or that he's sitting by himself, breaking bread, with no one watching. Because even performers deserve to come home. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest kindness we can offer those still caught in the show is to stop applauding, Later that night, you find yourself standing by the window, staring out into nothing in particular. The street is quieter than usual, just the occasional creak of a shutter or a whisper of fabric on stone as someone closes up their day. You rest your forehead gently against the wooden frame. It's cool, grounding, the kind of feeling that reminds you this body is yours and it's here, not yesterday, not tomorrow, here. A single moth flutters near the lantern outside, not frantic, just drawn. You understand it. Inside, the candle flickers a little harder, like it knows the end of its wick is near. You don't rush to replace it. There's comfort in letting things complete themselves. Your blanket waits, folded in that soft shape it always takes after being wrapped around you. There's something holy about that form, like it remembers how to hold you better than you remember how to ask. You lie down, not because it's time, but because it feels right. The room darkens around you. The sounds fall away. The outside world continues. Footsteps, laughter, a distant cartwheel. But here, inside this small quiet, none of that matters. Your breath slows. Your mind doesn't race. It wanders, gently, aimlessly, like a dog sniffing familiar ground in no hurry to find anything. Psychologists still debate whether the mind quiets through intentional stillness or simply when it finally runs out of stories to tell itself. Tonight, it feels like both. You pull the blanket over your shoulder. It smells like sleep, like all the nights before this one, but softer. And just before your eyes close, you think of the phrase you once scribbled on your tablet. Quiet is a feast too. And now, lying here, you taste it. The next morning greets you not with light, but with silence. The deep, velvet kind that settles across a room like dust on old books. You don't rush to move. Your body stretches before you ask it to, like it's already forgiving you for every time you once ignored its needs. You sit up slowly, no plans, no pressure, just presence. Your breath moves through you like a visitor you've learned to welcome rather than control. You notice how your chest rises, how your shoulders no longer reach for your ears. That's new. That's worth keeping. You swing your feet to the floor and feel the familiar coolness of worn stone. It no longer startles you. It grounds you. It has the same texture you've walked across in moments of worry and now in moments of calm. You brew tea again, not for energy, not for clarity, but for continuity, because some rituals become anchors. While it steeps, you open the window just a crack, enough to let in the sound of a broom brushing the street. There's no poetry in it, no deep meaning, but somehow it's the most honest sound you've heard all week. You sip your tea standing. You look around your room, not to evaluate, but to acknowledge. Every object feels like it belongs again. Even the chipped bowl, even the half-melted candle, even the journal you haven't written in since the dinner. Psychologists still debate whether healing is linear or cyclical. But your room looks like a spiral now. Messy, layered, always returning, but never exactly the same. You open the wax tablet once more and read your past entries, like postcards from an earlier version of you. Some make you laugh, some make you wince. All of them, though, make you grateful. You add one new line. Today, nothing extraordinary will happen, and I will be there for all of it. And that feels like enough. That feels like everything. And so, dear survivor of Roman excess, we reach the end of this involuntary odyssey. This convivium you never asked for, but endured with quiet, wine-drenched dignity. You outlasted the lukewarm wine, the questionable seafood, the speeches that dragged on like a bad omen. You even survived the judgmental stare of a whole roasted peacock. But more than that, you learned something. Sometimes, the greatest triumph is simply walking away intact, with your soul and stomach still intact, while Rome marches on, with its senators and its poets and its peacocks stuffed with metaphors. You are here, in your bed, in your silence, in your corner of the world, where no one expects you to pretend you like fermented fish sauce. And if there's one lesson to take from this absurd night, it is this: true luxury isn't a marble, tricliniums, or gold-embroidered cushions. It is the freedom to say no to them. So close your eyes, breathe deep, let sleep come like a gentle invitation. No demands, no toasts, no child slaves serving chilled snails. Because tonight, you are not a guest, not a spectator, not that person who sat near the watered-down wine. You're just you. And that, in any century, is glory enough. Good night.